It's 12:05 past. I will call the meeting to order of the Transportation Advisory Committee. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted later on Minuteman Media Network. And I need permissions to put them in those folders. I don't know if you saw my message, Aaron. So one of the things that we kind of talked about last time is, you know, I have been the default chair of the committee, but you know, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be me. You know, to be the receiver of the guidance and recommendations, and the chair may not necessarily be you know, a great combo. So I would open it up to see if there are any nominations for chair.
I guess I would ask first, can you hear me?
Yeah, can't see you, but I can hear you.
It's the video, I'm sorry. What does anybody feel about that? As far as on the committee, as far as Stephen chairing, and also I think that's a good point, Stephen, that you're receiving the input from the committee, but I guess from my perspective, if it were going to be somebody other than you, I don't know if a town employee would make sense, or if it should be one of the citizens on the committee. I'm by no means volunteering, but so, you know, I think.
I'm sorry. I probably should know this, but Stephen, do you mind mentioning who's on the committee here on the screen versus who is an observer or just a resident? And really, I don't need to know the observers, but just who's actually on the committee.
So it would be me, you, John Arena, Meryl Schwartz is here, Steve Dukrin, Phil Posner, Marcia Rasmussen, Wally Johnston, Aaron McCloskey is here with us. He's on the committee. And that's all I can see of committee members.
So that's only two or three members of the general public. Is that correct?
Three, yeah.
Three, okay.
There are three members of the general public. It's Phil, Wally, and Meryl.
I see.
Really,
yeah.
And
thank you.
You know, Meryl is really representing the Disabilities Commission. I mean, she's a member of the public, but her hook, if you will, to this is through the Disabilities Commission.
Okay.
So, and I think, you know, I don't want to belabor the point here, but you know, one of the things that with me serving as the default chair, I'm kind of I get information from town staff about issues that we should really be talking about here in terms of like traffic and, you know, some of the kind of nitty gritty stuff. But then also through, you know, I also get information from either community members or the board about broader policy issues that should be discussed. And so, you know, in terms of setting the agenda, I would have to probably be involved deeply in that anyway. So I don't mind chairing. I just wanted to put it out there. And I guess if I did continue to chair, I would try and at least continue to be open to other people wanting to add things to the agenda and offer, you know, comments, questions, criticisms, things like that. So I want to do this obviously in as open a way possible. So being chair, I you know, don't want to be perceived as a means of stifling, you know, free thought or debate or, you know, consideration of items. So it's more just, it's more managing the logistics and you know, setting the agenda.
what if we had another person who you worked with to set the agenda, and that way, there's some back and forth.
Like a co-chair?
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a co-chair. Could be a clerk, could be whatever. Just somebody for that particular function. I do think it would be good to have somebody, and that probably should be one of the 3 public members. But just second set eyes, opportunity to talk about, can we get all that done in one meeting kind of thing. And another opportunity for people to, if they want to come to whoever that is, rather than you, to recommend something for the agenda, they can.
Do you see anything, Stephen, that would be, an appearance of a conflict for you, since ultimately as a decision-making, person chairing the meeting, something that you would have to, deal with scrutiny over or something? Because, anything that we could do to avoid that, just generally, I always like to do that, erring on the side of caution. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Generally, this job doesn't involve a lot of scrutiny, so I'm not really worried about that. That was deeply sarcastic. I'm sorry. No, I mean, I think Kate, you raise a good point where if there's an unpopular but necessary decision that needs to be made and it is in conflict with what's being talked about here, I haven't really encountered that in this particular context yet, but that is always a possibility. So
I guess I'm just trying to avoid this was only put on the agenda because this is Stephen's passion for XYZ. I mean, I have no idea. I'm literally making this up, but if you try to avoid that from the jump, it's helpful. Sometimes it's not. So
yeah, no,
I'm going to mute now.
So anyway, so while your point, I think, any member on the committee can request agenda items and say, I requested this to be an agenda item, and, Stephen said no. What if the other people think we should talk about this? And if, for what I think, like I said, I think the point of this is to get issues on the table and talk them out. Like I said, I think it's just from an organizational standpoint, I'm happy to continue if we feel like it would be better to maybe to your point, Wally, have a co-chair or a clerk that's involved in setting the agenda who is a non-employee. That's a good idea too.
Unless somebody else is willing to do that, I can work on the agenda piece with you. But I'm, again, happy to let somebody else do that. I think it's going to be important. This is our 3rd meeting now, and I don't think we've talked about, and it's on the agenda for today, the substance of what we're going to try to do. And until we've got some handle on that, and we have an understanding of what sort of work that's going to entail, to align initiatives that exist with the Envision plan, or if there's something we want to come up with that's guided by that. I think the mechanics of how we operate would more likely fall out of some understanding of that or some agreement on that, and then we just figure it out. Like I said, I'd be happy to help with agendas, but I'm really kind of looking forward to hearing about what people want to accomplish with this.
Any other thoughts on that?
And I'm thinking the same, that Wally is, where, being hired by the school and hired, on the town as well. So it's, something that to have one of each maybe is a good idea.
Okay. Does anybody else have interest in fulfilling that role? No.
Not sure.
So, I guess then I would entertain a motion for chair.
Make a motion that Stephen Crane be the chair of the TEC.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
So there's a motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so roll call vote. And I guess I will call the roll for, actually, Aaron, do you want to call the roll to make it more formal, to make it more formal?
I can if you'd like. I think I got everybody who's on the
Mhm.
committee written down. All right. So Stephen Crane,
Yes.
Meryl Schwartz,
Yes.
Wally Johnston,
Yes.
John Arena,
Yes.
Marsha Rasmussen,
Yes.
Phil Posner,
Yes.
Aaron McCloskey,
Yes.
Kate Hodges,
Yes, but you didn't have a second.
I thought we did.
We did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I seconded.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
I heard 2
all set.
seconds.
All right. Did I get everybody? I think I wrote everybody down, but just to make sure.
Steve Dukran.
Steve Dukran, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Is that everybody now? Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So then,
I have a, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Meryl. No, go ahead.
I would just love to have a list of the people and where everybody's coming from, because I don't know who's who. I mean, I know who a few people are. I know Stephen and Marcia, but I don't, and Kate, of course, but I don't know who other people are representing. Could a list be made available by email?
Sure.
We
Thank
can-
you.
It'll also be available on the town website. I needed to verify the who is on the committee. So now that I have that list, that'll be up there as well.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
Just one housekeeping thing. I think the link that was in the calendar invite that was sent around is different than the one that was on the agenda. Just let's make sure that keep that straight. I couldn't understand why 4 after 2 I was the only one on the call. I used the calendar.
Oh, well, it's funny because when to start the meeting, I went into my Zoom profile and started the meeting from there because I wanted to make sure that it was the recording and everything was set up.
Yeah.
I wish I were an expert.
Not a big deal. I think it was probably something that happened 3 days ago, not today.
Okay. All right. So Aaron did distribute a set of minutes earlier.
I'd make a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion's
Second.
been made. So okay, there's a second.
Second.
Any comments, edits, corrections on the minutes? Hearing none, we will approve by roll call vote. And I can call this one.
Mhm.
I'll just go in the order of my screen. Kate Hodges,
Aye.
John Arena,
Aye.
Merrill Schwartz,
Yes, aye.
Steve Dukran,
Yes.
Phil Posner,
Aye.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Polly Johnston,
Aye.
Aaron McCloskey,
Aye.
and Stephen Crane, aye. I think I got everybody. Okay, so and I know we had done the doodle poll some time ago about Wednesdays at 2 generally being the best time. So I appreciate everybody kind of being available on short notice. Is this I assume then that we can continue with the Wednesdays at 2. Do people feel like we want to do this monthly or just on an as needed basis like we've been doing?
I'd say again, it depends on what we're gonna do, which comes later.
I was wondering if we have any sort of game plan or mandate or chart to be following so that we could have a sense of how frequent we need to meet.
We do have a charge, but it doesn't really, it's not like, I'll give you an example. It's not like the capital planning task force where we have a charge to produce a report.
Right.
This is really an ongoing, advisory group that kind of reviews things and gives feedback on whether it's policy issues or projects or traffic issues that we've kind of set forth in the charge. So, I think there are times where we'll be busier, and then there will be times where we probably won't need to meet because there's really nothing kind of on the radar. So, if people are comfortable with kind of an on-demand meeting schedule and this time generally works, I will endeavor to do better about giving notice than a couple of days like I did this time around. Then I'm happy to keep it that way. If we want to just plug in a monthly meeting just to make sure we have a check-in once a month, I'm also happy to do that. But I'm sure just about everybody on this committee doesn't need another meeting, especially if it's not really something that we're targeting for an agenda item. So, Bill?
So I generally agree with Wally. I think we need to define what we're going to do, but as a general proposition, I think there are so many things that will need to be done that expecting this to be a monthly meeting is appropriate.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm fine. I think there's a lot of stuff we could talk about, and even if there may be others that I am familiar with who aren't into kind of free range meetings. But I think for where we are and where we're trying to go, I'm okay, even if there's nothing, even if the agenda is, discuss transportation generally or something like that. And we just want to kind of have a free form discussion about where we think things are going, transportation trends, if there's, like, I guess said differently, if there's not a specific project or another, like a specific proposal we're trying to make a recommendation on, just having a general discussion about where we think things are, I'm okay with that. I think that is a part of our charge. So I think I'm happy to lock these in monthly, and we are, my calendar here, we're the last Wednesday of the month. Do we just want to start that now, last Wednesday of the month going forward?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll do that, and I will send out a revised invitation with the Zoom link that hopefully will work as we go forward. Just when you think you have things figured out.
This Zoom thing's so new that.
Most of you heard me say this. It's like for the first 300 years of Concord's history, we didn't do a single thing on Zoom, and now we're on it every day. And we made that switch pretty quickly because I've been using that line since like April. So, all right, great. So we'll make this a monthly meeting, and we'll target the last Wednesday of the month. Obviously, the last Wednesday of December is going to be between the holidays, and if there's nothing pressing, we may cancel that meeting or reschedule it if we do have something pressing to deal with. Fair enough?
And the last Wednesday of November is the day before Thanksgiving for those who might be planning to cook for Thursday.
You're expected to be here, Marcia. And for your
I can
benefit,
do
the
that.
meeting will be 4 hours long.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're oven mitts, you know.
Maybe we ought to move that one out a
Yeah.
week,
Okay, we'll look
first
at that
week in
schedule.
December.
Yeah, we can look at that schedule, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have a meeting schedule. All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Steve Dukrin. We received a request from the residents of the Canantum and beyond about a traffic safety zone. Steve did report on this to the select board a couple of weeks ago, and so for the TAC's benefit, if you want to review that, you know, the process and kind of the variables, Steve, that we're looking at.
Okay. So I think of particular interest is just the traffic safety zone. Can that be established based on current regulations? So we did some homework on that. And I might be repeating some of what we talked about the last time, but nevertheless, we still have to go through it. Based on state law, a traffic safety zone first must be set at 20 miles an hour. We know the request in the petition was for 25 mile per hour zone. So that's a definitive requirement. The other thing is that in order to have a traffic safety zone, the street needs to be in an area where you have what they call a vulnerable road user or road users to be present. And they give examples, the state give examples of, you know, what to expect in these areas. Parks and playgrounds, senior housing, hospitals or other medical facilities, high schools and higher education centers, daycare facilities. And they pointed out that these have to be adjacent to the street being considered for the safety zone. So this section of Sudbury Road, you know, doesn't qualify because we cannot identify any of these uses that will generate these vulnerable road users. And we have to make sure that this is not in conflict with what we know as a school zone for elementary education. Those are set by a different set of rules. That's why it's only mentioned here high schools or higher education, because school zones are a different category. So I don't think the laws allow us to move forward with a traffic safety zone. So then we have to look at what can be done for the 25 mile per hour speed that people desire. Everyone points to the fact that you see them in many towns. You see this 25 miles per hour. That was, doing that was given to municipalities, that authority in 2016 by a state law change. And they gave the towns the ability to opt to lower speed limits from 30 miles per hour to 25 if you have a thickly settled area. And obviously that's defined as where you have homes close to each other. I think they use 200 feet as the maximum distance between homes. As you can also establish a 25 miles per hour in a commercial area. And so, and the town of Concord did opt in 2017, I believe, to have these areas designated as the 25-mile-per-hour zone. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with just one option for reducing speed limits. And that is the method is, follows what's called a speed zoning process that was developed by Mass DOT. And it involves doing a comprehensive speed study by the town and then submitted the recommendations of that study to the DOT. And if they agree with the recommendations, then they will develop the regulations for the town to enact. That is a process by itself. We would have to hire a consultant to conduct a study, make the recommendations, and there will be, obviously there'll be some back and forth between us and the state. And there is a chance that, so you're not going to, just to understand, you will not be doing just a study of that one area. It's comprehensive, so they'll look at a corridor for, some distance beyond the limits of the area we're interested in. So there's a chance that they may come back and even increase the speeds. I don't think it will happen in this location because current conditions, like we talked about last time, the site obstructions do warrant that the traveling speed be less than is happening there. Essentially, the speed study looks at the traveling speeds. And the philosophy is if the road can support these speeds, then that should be the traveling speed. And for the most part, the corridor does support, the straight sections, higher speeds, and it will be up to the town in the study to point out the constraints that we have. But in any event, that's the process that's available to us to move forward to get a speed reduction or a speed change. I don't see that happening in short order because of the process. And if we hire a consultant, we got to obviously fund that service, and we'll take it from there. So those are what the laws allow us to work with, and it's, I guess, if the committee wants to discuss this any further, I do want to entertain an idea of maybe because we know that people are operating at a speed higher than the posted speed limit in this location. And again, it is 30 miles an hour, which the road has been, I wouldn't say designed, but the road can carry 30 miles an hour at that location because the traveling speed is much higher, 40 miles an hour. One of the things that we can do with quick turnaround is put some advisory speed signs. Those signs would need regulations, and it couldn't be enforced because they're just cautionary. But we could probably do that. On the approaches to this intersection, we can post, say, 25 miles an hour, those orange or yellow signs. Stephen, is that?
Yeah, no, that's a good
you want to
summary,
address
Steve.
here?
Yeah, no, it's a good summary. I think it's I think, I think you laid out some good suggestions for us to consider. So Phil, you want to comment? And as a committee member, Phil, I'd say you just have to ask to be recognized. I don't know if you have to formally raise your hand. I'm trying to keep this pretty casual.
So I understand Mr. Dukran's viewpoint. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with how he defines the word adjacent. I don't agree that this road can carry traffic at greater speeds. We already know that we have an identified hazard. The idea that we need a traffic study, I think, is counter to what the Massachusetts law requires. I would urge the committee to report to the selectmen that they have the power to change the speed limit in this location, that the selectmen have already, as a policy matter, agreed to adopt the recommendation or the statute, which provides that the speed limit in the town is 25 miles an hour. They can declare that this is a congested area and take action immediately. No waiting, no study, install the infrastructure and move forward. I would suggest to you that a second opinion from another traffic engineer would probably agree with me. I don't mean to disrespect Mr. Dukran's viewpoint, but I have a different viewpoint. I think we need to do something now. We have an identified hazard. And I think that we should report to the select board that we have it within our authority as a town to take action.
Okay. Go ahead, Marcia. Yeah.
I am aware of a situation in Sudbury many years ago where the town undertook posting signs of 25 miles per hour in an area which was even more narrow, more congested and more developed, and the town of Sudbury lost. So I would caution taking strong action at this point in time without the studies that Mr. Dukran has recommended, and do some research into that Sudbury litigation to understand the conditions that they were dealing with before we jump into doing something that will open the town to further litigation.
I can tell you that having reviewed some of the material that's relied on, I don't know the case, but we can take a look at it. I have looked at the speed zoning requirements that the town has relied on for various purposes. I sent them to the town manager this morning. The speed zoning for this section of Sudbury Road was set in 1949. To the best of my knowledge, 1949 is about 71 years ago, and conditions have changed. In addition, the Commonwealth policies with respect to speed zoning and traffic management in general are different than what occurred when speed zoning was originally enacted. They're different than they were 20 years ago, and they're different than they were 10 years ago. Speed zoning has an underlying concept of traffic throughput. The idea of using our roads solely for traffic throughput or primarily for traffic throughput is antiquated. Are we more concerned about how quickly FedEx delivers packages or pedestrian and bicyclist safety? That's what we're talking about.
I'm not arguing with you about that. I'm saying that in this case, which was more recent than 71 years ago, where the town undertook putting up signage, there was litigation and the town lost. And so before we go forward, I'm saying that we should check that information. Perhaps it requires a change in some of the legislation or other requirements, but I don't believe we should be jumping into something that opens the town to litigation.
I mean, I think, certainly, a second opinion, we have an engineering firm that has done some work in town on this. And we can, I think Steve's narration of it and description of it is consistent with mine, in my experience, both here and in other communities. And I don't think, Phil, that it's a binary choice. I think what we're all trying to do here is to combine, combine these ideas in how we manage our roadways. But I don't think, I'm not sure that, getting, not at least acknowledging or respecting the liability potential is something that I don't think we can do. I think we have to look at what do the rules say currently, even if the existing rules or the existing regulatory frameworks don't align with our community priorities or ideals. That doesn't mean we can get outside of them, I don't think. So, but I agree with your first thought, which is maybe we can have somebody take a look at this, not only in this location, but in others as well.
Seemed to me it would be helpful to get some second party clarification on what the regs are. And then if we were going to do a study to get some idea of cost and time, so we know what we're dealing with. I think the sooner we can do something there, the better. So, but a clear understanding. We have two people who are very capable of reviewing information, who have come up with two very different viewpoints on effectively the same regulations. So somehow we have to square that.
Like I said, I think Steve and I can talk about the firm that we have that has done the work and see if they can take a look at it. Any other comments from committee members? Okay, I see Steve Ledoux has his hand up and Josh, you have your hand up. Steve, I think you had yours up first.
Okay, great, thanks. I guess I'm a little confused. I thought the town had voted to designate a 25 mile per hour as a default all around town. So I guess I'm a little confused about that. I do think that, our state laws and state regulations are very antiquated. They don't take in consideration complete streets, people walking, people biking. I mean, it is car oriented. All the regulations are car oriented. This intersection, and we appreciate the fact that the town put up the speed signs. And my observation is it has slowed a bunch of cars down, but I did see somebody going through that intersection at 47 the other day. So, clearly it's not the total panacea. So, I would like to see the town, as Phil suggested, look at whether the selectmen could change the speed zone there. I'm not a big fan of the traffic study because, as I understand it, it may actually raise the speed limit. It's based on, was it 80% of
85th, yeah.
median speed or whatever. So, it's been my experience in the past that is actually counterintuitively raised traffic or speed limit, I should say. So I would not be a big fan of that. And Marcia, to your point, I think I was town manager of Sudbury when that thing was going on. And it was a little complicated, but the selectmen just lowered the speed limit without any, they just got pressured by the neighborhood. I know it sounds like this, but they just did it without any consequence. They just didn't. And then somebody got ticketed that was smart enough to figure out whether there'd been a proper change in speed zone or whatever, speed limit. So it was a little more complicated, but and that's not what we're suggesting. Whatever we want it done correctly. I think exploring this more, but at some point we just can't be studying it forever and studying it to death. Decisions have to be made. So at any rate, we appreciate the efforts that have taken place so far.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Josh?
Thanks. Yeah, I echo everything that Steve just said and also what Phil was saying. To add on to that, there are vulnerable road users in the roadway. There are bicyclists who ride along Sudbury runners who cross at that intersection, and then definitely school children who are crossing, twice a day, and they are middle school and grade school age. So I do take issue that there aren't any vulnerable road users. They do exist. There are also houses within 150 feet of the intersection, the house itself, not just the lot. So definitely can meet the letter of those laws. And then last, just curious about any updates on engineering and schedule for the complete streets installations.
We did report.
Bless you.
Bless you. We did report on that to the select board at the last meeting, and like I said, I think we think it'll be early next year where we would be bidding that up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. You guys can lower your hands. Just keep me keep me on focus here. All right. So we can talk. Steve and I can talk offline about next steps on that and looking at a second opinion and just make sure we have all of this right. And we can report that back to the board, the select board as well, and we can bring that back here at hopefully our next meeting. Any other comments on that? I mean, I think the big thing is, and Steve Ledoux made the comment about being the town manager in Sudbury when that happened. It's, he made a good point. There are, the state laws and regulations still control much of this, and Mass DOT is the arbiter of those things. And while it's sometimes it's counterintuitive, I've been through the scenario of, be careful what you wish for with a traffic study. When you had a goal of lowering speed, but because they took the measurements and the 85th percentile was higher, DOT was like, well, we did this, so now you should post the road properly. And if you don't, that creates an enforcement and liability issue. But that's still, it is founded in science and engineering and math, and they are the rules that we generally need to adhere to. So, but like I said, I think the important thing is to just make sure we get it right. So, Phil?
I guess I'm curious what you think the liability issue is. Who's going to be liable if the speed limit is going to change to a lower speed limit?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's, like I said, I think it's more the enforcement issue. It's more enforcement than liability, but if you have an enforcement problem, I guess I'm making the assumptive leap that then you also have a liability problem. But I could be wrong about that. I am not an attorney, nor am I an engineer. So anyway, all right, so if there's nothing further on that, we'll go to the next item on our agenda, which is the safe routes to school discussion. And, Phil, I know you've put a lot of work into this already, and so I would happily turn the floor over to you. I did have some conversation with the superintendent about this project. Both she and I have direct experience with the Safe Routes to School program, although not in Concord. And so, we're interested in hearing, perspectives on this. And so, Phil, I'd ask you to take the lead on it since you put a lot of sweat equity into it already.
Thank you. So just bear with me for 1 second. For those of you who are not familiar with what Safe Routes to School is, it is a program that was started regionally originally. It was adopted in part by the Federal Highway Administration, and it's also adopted at the state level by MassDOT, that's the Department of Transportation. The idea of Safe Routes is that it is a mechanism by which the State Department of Transportation encourages municipalities to create local programs that encourage school children to engage in what the state now calls active transportation, meaning walking or biking to school, as opposed to either being transported on the school bus or having individual car trips to get to school. As we all know, we're in the midst of a highly unusual situation. We're in the midst of a pandemic. The schools have encouraged parents to opt out of having their school kids take the bus in order to achieve social distancing on the school buses. And a lot of folks have in fact opted out of taking the school bus. And at each of the schools, we've seen various levels of kids participating in an informal bike to school program, which was undertaken by a group of citizens, including me, Josh, and a number of other folks who had school-age children. The informal program has been very successful. We've been keeping track of how many kids are biking to school by counting the number of bikes. We haven't been able to count the number of kids who are walking to school, but I know it's pretty significant because I've observed it. And we're seeing how it's going over the course of the year. Safe Routes to School is a formal program. Not only does the program provide some structure for the schools to follow, programmatic materials are developed at the state level and it can be implemented and tailored to suit by the school or the other departments who would typically be involved in it. So it's usually a coalition of school and town departments. The coalition typically includes the school department, individual schools, the public safety departments, police primarily, also the Department of Public Works, sometimes the Department of Health, and depending on the municipality, if there's a transportation department or other types of departments that might be involved in getting kids back and forth to school, they may be involved as well. Safe Routes to School participation also qualifies the school department and the town for grant money that might be attached to the Safe Routes program. The grant money is typically distributed through MassDOT. Last year, there was a grant program that was actually funded by the Bar Foundation. So it was actually foundation money and not taxpayer money that was used to fund some of the Safe Routes to School improvements. The type of improvements that are typically funded through the grants are sort of soft improvements as opposed to hard improvements. So we're talking about signs and stripes on the road. So in other words, signage telling motorists that there are vulnerable road users present, school children, and striping on the road, which would be either creating new crosswalks or refreshing old crosswalks or redesigning the crosswalks so that they're safer. The other thing that Safe Routes does is it gets involved in instructing both the school children and their parents and the community in general about safety on the roads. And it also involves kind of a multifaceted approach. So you have not only the schools being involved, but typically the public safety groups, primarily the police, but sometimes other groups, and the DPW get involved in terms of providing instruction, encouragement, and also, to the extent that it's available, infrastructure improvements to make things safer for kids. We have reached out on a number of occasions to the school. I've spoken with John Arena a number of times. I know that John has been in contact with Dr. Hunter. I have also spoken with the principals at the Alcott School and at Thoreau School, just to check in and let them know that this program is available. And for the most part, I think everybody's interested, but feeling a little bit cautious. And also, I know that the school department has quite a bit of stuff on their plate. So, you know, my sense is that a little bit of encouragement for them to participate would go a long way in terms of their being comfortable with this. One thing that is available is that Safe Routes has engaged a large civil engineering firm called AECOM. AECOM in turn has engaged a regional staff person who serves as a liaison to the program. And she's basically a resource person who can be on the other end of the phone, answer questions, provide advice, etc. So to the extent that the school wants to participate more, they can. To the extent that the school wants to take a step back and let other town officials develop programmatic materials or use the state developed programmatic materials, that's available as well. So it's a good program. According to what I learned this morning, approximately 63% of municipalities in the state are participating. And there's no cost to the town to participate in the program. Of course, there might be a cost if there's an infrastructure idea that needs to be implemented. But Safe Routes does not require that a school actually implement any particular infrastructure improvement. The only thing that it does is encourage municipalities to use the steps that are made available as a means of encouraging them to provide safe and comfortable ways for school kids to get to school. And I'll say as a last comment on this, one idea that came up from this morning's conference was that to the extent that school kids' routes are safe and comfortable for people to use using active transportation, those routes become comfortable places for all road users to use. So if a route's comfortable and well marked and well designated, I think you'll see more people walking and biking in general, as opposed to just school kids. So that's the hopefully the big picture of what this is all about.
Great, thanks. I know, John, I don't know if you wanted to offer your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sure. Again, yeah, Phil and I have spoken a few times. I have had a brief conversation with Dr. Hunter and what the school department wants to align with the town as well. So there's more research that we're doing, and you know, again, because of the pandemic that we're in now, we haven't been able to focus a lot of time on it, and want to make sure that we vet it thoroughly and not make a hasty decision either way on that. So it's something that we do need to meet as a group of admin group and discuss further all the complexity of everything, you know, the student safety and the routes and the whole part of it.
Any other committee members want to weigh in? Well, I can, for what it's worth, I can offer my experience on it, and I think I agree with what Phil said. You know, in terms of even if all we did on this is use Safe Routes to School resources to create a program of awareness, you know, I think that would be a powerful thing. You know, sometimes I've actually done this in 2 municipalities, and there are times where there's an obvious project that is going to provide a great amenity or fill a need. I'm not sure that I'm aware of one here. I think we've spent a lot of time already in the brief life of this committee. We've spent a lot of time talking about the challenges of our existing road network and lack of a really well-developed sidewalk network. And so there are, you know, times where, you know, I think we could be really challenged in terms of an infrastructure project, but I do think that how techniques to educate drivers and pedestrians and cyclists on how to, you know, basically share the road safely could be, especially with, and Phil, I agree with you. I think if you got school age kids, you know, comfortable riding to school it would have a spillover effect, and you'd see more people doing it. I know I've experienced that as well in other communities I've been in. So, and that's actually, and I also, like, as I relate, had a brief conversation with Dr. Hunter, and that was basically the sum of it, which is maybe using the Safe Routes to School program to kind of bring somebody in and do an assessment of what we have in terms of a network, a road network, points, and what should our priorities be, or not? Let me say it differently. Not what should our priorities be. We can decide those for ourselves. It's what should our areas of focus be as we go through that prioritization. So, I'm not, and I know you sent a lot of materials on it. I'm not sure when the next round. It's a rolling program, I seem to recall. Have they changed that?
In terms of the grants that are available, yeah, they're rolling. In terms of the assistance that's made available, the technical assistance that's made available, that's pretty much upon demand. So as soon as the town signs up, if there's a question, you would get into the queue, and the availability of that is just as quickly as they can get somebody to start working with the town.
How do we get in the queue?
So the school department would sign a one-pager application form and say, we would like to participate, and then start a dialogue with the staff person who's assigned to the town about what the objectives are as far as the town is concerned, and they would help to develop a plan of action.
I'm just making a note. So I guess why don't John, why don't you and I see if we can get some time with Dr. Hunter and kind of get her point of view on this, and see if this, if this is something we think we can reasonably recommend pursuing.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, nice. Any other comments on that? Josh, I say, had your hand up. Like I said, we're keeping it casual, so we'll allow for public comment here on individual agenda items today.
Thank you. Josh, 39 East Circle. I have been helping with the Willard School bike to school sort of approach, and speaking with Matt Lucy, who's the principal there, and the crossing guard. They do have specific projects in mind. He said he was super interested in the safe routes to school.
Hello.
But
Hi, I'm tied up.
to Dr. Hunter about it, and like Phil is saying, and John is saying, they want to explore this carefully. So appreciate that. But there are projects. I also think and agree with you, Stephen, that the overall information approach is really beneficial, because it's another layer. It's the state kind of saying, here's a way to bike and ride and walk safely and interact with vehicles safely. And I see it as a great resource, in addition to all the work that the schools are already doing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Tanya?
Yeah, I fully support safe bike riding for children to school.
Hey, Tanya, and I didn't ask Steve to do this. So Josh, actually, by announcing his address, reminded me that I'm supposed to ask people to identify their name and address.
Okay. Tanya Gale is 60 Prescott Road. What one of my concerns is when a bike path is built so that high-speed bikers can go on that too, then it becomes unsafe for school children and recreational bikers and walkers. And I just wanted this to be kept in mind moving forward.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion on this? Okay, Steve.
Just wanted to talk about my experience with the Safe Routes program. The last community I worked in, I I worked on a number of projects with their school department. And maybe the program has changed because I haven't worked on a project for a while. But I remember the schools were invited to do travel plans. So they would get a small grant of say $15,000 per school. And you'll do a travel plan, which identify those projects like Josh talked about for Willard. And then when that plan is accepted by the state, then you apply for a infrastructure project. Assuming that that process has changed now, Phil, because I thought that's the opportunity for with a small grant upfront, you can really figure out, you can spend the time and money and figure out which projects you really want to push forward.
Well, the MassDOT program's a little different than that. There are participation in the program does qualify the town for infrastructure grants, but the state has come up with some pretty lightweight type grants, which are intended, as I mentioned, to do signs and striping, for example. And those are relatively low dollar grants, which are intended to be deployed really quickly, as opposed to having, you know, a state process where you plan it out with an engineering firm and then run it up to MassDOT and then they review it and then it comes back. These are designed for fairly rapid action. The other thing is that some of the grant money is really intended to be for public education as opposed to simply infrastructure. So I'll send you some information directly so you can see how Massachusetts has chosen to deploy their federal funds for this.
Okay. All right. So our next agenda item is discuss committee goals. And I think, you know, we started off, you know, talking about, well, what are we going to be doing? And, you know, I think this meeting, I think, is a good example. We've talked through a specific, you know, request with regards to traffic safety zone and talked about process that we believe exists for that kind of thing. And I think as a part of that conversation, you know, we've acknowledged that, you know, we have to strike the right balance between what the rules are and what our objectives are, or meaning our community objectives, not the committee's objectives. And that's really what this group is intended to do, is be that link between, you know, kind of detailed traffic management analysis and broader community, you know, policy goals that then, and so as we kind of hash, the point of the group is to hash these things out and kind of put me in a position where I can either make decisions that are, you know, operational decisions or create recommendations for the select board. So, you know, I think when I say discuss committee goals, I don't think we're going to solve them all now, but I just wanted to open the floor for folks to kind of talk about any thoughts or ideas, or is there how we should structure our goals, or you know, should it be specific? Like, should we? You know, I generally am averse to like specific project goals, but on a committee like this, that's, you know, supposed to be kind of chewing through some specific things, I don't think that would be off the table. So I don't have, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a preconceived notion of what the goals should be. If I did, I'd probably write them first and then circulate them. But since this is a brand new committee, I thought we can take the time to, you know, group think on it a little bit and see where it takes us. But like I said, I don't have the expectation that we are going to hash out and settle on a set of goals now. This is more the start of a conversation. So the floor is open for anybody who wants to.
I had thrown the subject of transportation out to the Disability Commission. Actually, I only have spoken with Jean Goldsberry, and we came up with a couple of just quick items, but I was thinking that people who are liaisons, such as myself, could, perhaps, offer, some ideas for things that are of particular concern to our individual groups. Very specifically, there, the two items that Jean mentioned to me were, number one, in terms of disability, is really following through with accessibility issues with the MBTA. There have been a lot of concerns brought to the Disability Commission regarding how the inaccessibility of the train station. And it would be really nice for this committee to sort of work with us to approach the MBTA to see what we can do to make the whole station in Concord more accessible. I know there have been issues in the past. And the other thing is really general concerns regarding transportation in town for all citizens, and making it more available to people with disabilities. I think that people have to scurry around to find ways of getting to appointments, or just getting places that are west of Concord. We have the ability to go into Boston for appointments when we arrange, and the ride will take us in that direction. But there is no system for us to get to places that from Acton west of here, there's no real avenue for that type of transportation. And the COA has its own system of transportation, which is really not inclusive to us. So there are some issues that are uniquely disability related, but in general, the town could be of some assistance to us to develop some real programs, or at least assessments of, new ways of making transportation available to everybody. So those are the two things just right off. I mean, we haven't really discussed this in our whole committee, but these two things have come up over the course of many months, and we can certainly refine them a bit and make more of a formal presentation, but we'd love to get some input as to whether there are other concerns that other people have about basic transportation needs in the town.
Meryl, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing those two. And I think I made notes, I'm sure Erin did as well, and Kate as our disabilities coordinator. I know Kate and I have discussed this before as well, and I do think that this is going to be an overarching goal that I think is going to, unfortunately, I say fortunate, I think it's a good thing we should continue to talk about, but I also think it's going to be with us for a while as we, especially given the struggles of the T, and I don't think anybody knows how that's going to come back. And unfortunately,
Right.
I can tell you from direct experience, they're not really going to invest in resources and not extra things, but things that aren't already underway because they've been really, really wounded by COVID-19. But it doesn't mean we can't continue to look out past the pandemic, which hopefully
Absolutely.
will end soon. So, any other thoughts on potential goals or objectives?
Wally, when I looked at the charge and look at it now, there are 8 items suggested by the select board that this committee would do. And they kind of go well beyond what we've talked about. There's this, as I read it, it's asking us to review the Envision Concord goals, especially as they relate to transportation. A lot of what Meryl just talked about is in there. I was on that committee as a school committee representative. And we spent a lot of time talking about streets, transportation. And it seems to me that the request was to dig more deeply into that and to come up with, a better informed understanding of what we have, what's available to us, what the costs would be, what the time would be, so that we can Concord can ultimately make some wise scheduled adjustments to what we have now over time. And as we did the Envision Concord plan, clearly there were things in there that we hoped would be a guide to town staff. But I think there were also things there that went beyond the level of detail that Envision Concord could do. And I think this was one of them. So I'm a little, I think somebody needs to do that. If it's not this committee, then there probably ought to be another committee formed. But that's not what we've talked about doing here yet.
Is what?
The 8 things that are in the charge.
Okay. I was actually, while you were saying that, I was looking up the Envision Concord transportation goals, because those are overarching community goals that I think we should try and weave into not only this committee, but also the select board's goal setting discussion, I think, is informed by that. Our town departments setting, by reference, I think incorporates the long range plan. And actually goal number 1 is establish a central transportation planning function within town government to reduce motor vehicle dependence and traffic volume within Concord, and encourage more environmentally sustainable blend of transportation modes, protect the character of town, and reduce the need for parking. Yes, Marcia?
I just wanted to add, in talking about transportation in general, one of the issues prior to COVID was first mile, last mile. How do you help people get to the train station or home from the train station? How do they get to work or home from work? We had hoped to have, we were looking at a grant for a workforce transportation shuttle. That money got taken back by the state because of the pandemic, but those are issues and concerns that talk to or speak to the number of vehicles on the road, the need for parking around our train stations, and how we get people from point A to point B. Another factor that I think is transportation oriented, but it's on a lesser scale, is how do you connect neighborhoods and destinations to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, to the center of town, to the Reformatory Branch Trail, and how do we make it possible for people to easily access these places rather than at the roads or at the intersections. So I think we need to talk through our potential network of trails, or where we have trails and how do we connect them. And I don't know if that's this group or another group that you want to task with that kind of thing, but those are two areas that help inform the conversation about transportation.
Yeah, I agree.
That makes
Any
sense.
other, yeah, any other committee members have input on this? Phil?
Just kind of following up on Marcia's comment, there is a group that has been formed by MAPC to explore intercommunity bicycle networks. That group has met several times, and it's going to continue to meet. I can send you some information about what their conversations have been about, Marcia. But at least one of the conversations has to do with, aside from identifying the routes and making suggestions for improvements of the infrastructure itself, also creating kind of uniform signage and providing people with information that's easily accessible as to where these routes actually are. This is a network that is in the sort of north and west of Boston, extending from Lexington out as far west as Air and Harvard.
Right.
Thanks. You know, so just to envision Concord has 5 goals, and I read the first one. The second one talks about, so I'm not going to read them, but the second one talks about provide effective mobility options who cannot or do not want private vehicles, so more mobility options to get around. The third one is, walking and bicycling connections between key nodes, which Marcia, I think, just spoke to. The fourth one is taking a regional approach to reducing commuter traffic. We actually we've been involved in a number of those. That's obviously been impacted directly by the pandemic, not just the grant that got taken away, but even, the Crosstown Connect program that we've been involved in has seen their ridership, their ridership has dropped substantially. And then the fifth one is about parking. And so I think, I guess what I would offer as a suggested goal is and I guess it's a suggestion for comment and feedback from the committee. Should we set a goal of trying to find ways of analyzing how COVID-19 has impacted local transportation patterns, local multimodal patterns, and parking patterns? Do people feel like that's something that we could, get our hands around?
I'm just thinking about, obviously those are issues that are impacting us right now. We have no idea how they're going to impact us going forward and for how long, but I think we all hope that at some point in time, we'll be back to a more normal pattern of life And it would seem to me to be, if we're going to sink a lot of time into this, certainly some of the things you mentioned there, I think are important. And they've been mentioned by other people about the impact of our ability to do things because of COVID, from a funding and just a pure availability of time standpoint. But I think unless there was something that we planned to do with that information to alter what we're doing now during COVID, I don't know that too deep a analysis of that is not what I would envision this committee doing, but it's just my 2 cents.
I think where I was going is what things have changed that, or what changes as a result of COVID are going to last and what are going to go away as the pandemic proceeds. And I think you're right about one thing. I don't think we know yet. And so it's kind of like a diagnosing in real time thing. But you know, it may be too soon. It may be too soon to have that as a goal. I will tell you that I saw Mass DOT put out an analysis that they're saying 2024 before, you know, commuting levels get back to pre-COVID.
I think that's hopeful.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll set that aside for now. And we can just, and maybe it's a thing where as we talk about, as we get into issues, we just do it on a, you know, if we talk about, you know, safe routes to school as an aspect of that conversation, can we talk about, well, because of COVID-19, a lot more people are biking or walking to school. John talked about the reduced capacity on the buses and things like that. Do we see that continuing, you know, post-pandemic? And what, yes, and why, or no and why? I think that can certainly be a part of that dialogue. Any other comments on the goals in the committee? Steve?
Yes, so I'm going to speak, say on behalf of Public Works, because we're there when the rubber hits the road. So I know the committee will address the overarching goals of the town in Vision 2030, like you mentioned, Stephen, but you know, there are other things that we have to deal with on a regular basis. And we do have that traffic management group that deals with, you know, certain concerns that come into our attention. And they at times require that policies be set. And at a staff level, that can't be done. So this committee being an advisory to the town manager and the select board, I believe those policies can be discussed at this committee level. That's one aspect. The second one is, you know, I believe there are a number of safety issues in town with our road network, sidewalk network, trails, what have you. And everything takes resources, you know, resources are always limited. And there will be times when we have to set priorities. And I believe bringing those before this committee, so at least we can get down to, this is what we can really do for all practical purposes. I don't know if the committee might want to look into those. And one more thing I wanted to bring up is we are entering a cycle for funding under the State Transportation Improvement Program, the 5-year program for federal fiscal years 22 through 26. So, so they're looking for the towns to put in applications for their projects for capital investments. And maybe this committee can help identify, you know, which ones we want to move forward. because we have to do a good job. It's a very competitive program, but there's good money. The Complete Streets program actually comes out of that. And it's done through the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Boston one. So I think there's over 100 communities in that organization. But there's always good money to get, like we did for the Complete Streets. So if we can identify one, possibly two good projects that we want to put forward, and we do the legwork and make sure the applications are done well, and we stand a good chance of getting funding.
Great, thanks, Steve.
Sure.
Anybody else? And I should say, I do have another meeting starting here in a minute. Any other committee comments on goals? If not, I did see Richard Hollander, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm the co-chair of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee, and I want to kind of reiterate what Marcia just said about ensuring that there are good connections to the rail trail, the current one, and also the Reformatory Branch Trail. I think especially when the Route 2 bridge is completed, we're going to see a significant increase in usage of the trail. There are some conflicts getting on and off the trail. I guess just personally, the committee itself is committed to ensuring safe access to and from the trail. But also personally, I think that a simple look at existing conditions. In other words, there are situations where speed limit signs are almost conflicting with each other. There are situations where it's not clear why some signs are up, why some signs are not up. But also even, and I mentioned, the town engineer mentioned this in terms of sidewalks, where are the logical places to emphasize safe routes for cyclists and for pedestrians. I think that the Safe Routes to School program would go a long way to identifying those and keeping those. So from the rail trails point of view, we're just getting started with some of the, I think the usage of the trail and the benefits it's going to be bringing to the town. And we want to ensure that this committee includes that in your planning. Thank you.
Name and address, Richard.
Excuse me? Oh, name and address, 399 Old Bedford Road, Richard Hollander.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess what I'd say is that kind of fell, in my view, more into a public comment. But I do think we do have a connection with the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. In fact, I can see that as a freestanding agenda item to kind of talk through some of the things that you just mentioned. So I very much appreciate the comment. Kate?
Definitely.
Say Kate, sorry,
Kate.
my computer's kind of going in and out because the other meeting started, so it's screwed up. I was just going off of the charge of the committee, so perhaps I'm taking it too literally. But I just would like to have a discussion more of the items in the charge. And maybe that's for a future meeting. And I don't know if we can get through all 8 of them, but I'm just feeling like we haven't quite even started to accomplish one of those. And maybe that's the goal, but I tend to take things kind of literally with what's in front of me, and that's either a blessing or a character flaw or a little bit of both. But I just feel like we haven't really talked about the 8 things that are there, so.
We did talk about them in our first meeting. I don't know if you remember that, but it was out of context. And so we just kind of read them. And I think as we go, you're right, going back to as a part of our goal setting, going back to the charge. And now that we're a couple of meetings into this, starting to see the universe of what's going to be a priority for us to say, all right, in context, how do these items in the charge fit? So
I mean, you've worked with me long enough to know that I have that annoying, like, what direction are we going to, so I know where to row my boat 100 miles an hour. So I'll just wait for that.
And I have a tendency to get off script. So
no.
Yes. Okay. Anybody else in the committee? Otherwise, I'll. Dory, I see your hand up. Name and address, please.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Dory Keogh, 51 MacArthur Road, and some of you have been sort of hinting at an area that I'd like to give a few minutes, and I know it's at the end of a long meeting, so I'll be as brief as possible. But I was delighted to hear about the formation of your committee because we have a real problem in West Concord with Junction Park. And we need some help in transportation in the very broadest terms. And so this is about bicycles, but not just bicycles. It's multi-types of wheeled vehicles that I didn't even know existed, which now see bikes going through Junction Park and say, that's a great place to ride my scooter or my skateboard. Junction Park is well used by a variety of different groups of people and has been since it was put together in the middle 2000s or 2013 it opened. When it was in the planning stage, and for those of you who were in Concord in the early 2000s, you know at that point it was just a rectangle of brick, mostly broken brick, a couple of odd trees here and there. And Public Works decided to renovate that area. And the town engineer of each successive town engineer chaired the idea of renovating that area, which is really central to West Concord. They then asked the West Concord Green Thumbs to be part of the planning, and we were just starting on the idea of what we do now, which just very briefly is to do the planning and planting and gardening of all of the 5 public garden areas in West Concord, and we manage the hanging baskets. So as we were doing the planning and the deciding what would Junction Park, the shape of it, take place, it was wonderful. It was just a tabula rasa. Go ahead and do something. We're here. It's here. We kept saying, well, where is the bike trail going to put bikes once they get through where they came out at what used to be the rug place now, which goes into the junction, right into the junction of Main and Commonwealth. And the town engineers would ask, and the answer which would ever come from wherever they were asking, I guess the people who were managing the trail going through Concord, well, we don't know yet. We haven't decided yet. And so we proceeded with our plans and the park was finished. Well, come to find out, there was really no plan except please walk your bikes. And so the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail people before the opening of the park, you can't see this, but I'll send it to you, Stephen, as the chair. It was something from the December issue of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail magazine, which goes out to all of its members saying, keep everyone safe, please walk your bike through Junction Park.
And hey, Dory.
Yeah.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yep.
So I think we're getting a little deeper into what I think is appropriate for this section of the meeting. When you submit that to me, how about you request that we add this to an upcoming meeting agenda, and then I'm happy to just have a fuller discussion about this where we can all kind of be prepared versus now kind of like both Kate and I have to go to another meeting.
And I know this meeting has gone on longer. Just let me, in quick finaling, say that the director of Concord Park Assisted Living is very concerned about her residents in the spot. So sure. I want it to come someplace. Is this the place for it to go?
I don't know that we'll come up with solutions, but I certainly think we can have it as an agenda item to talk out. I don't know if it's squarely in our charge.
I don't either.
But we can at least assess that at a meeting.
Okay, I'd like it as what we'd really like is to get something started this fall, and I could hear your meeting schedule, but if it's possible, could we be doing this in November? Try.
I really can't commit to anything now. So, Rich, I see you have your hand up, but if it's in response to what Dory just said, I'm going to ask you to hold until we talk about this another time. And I don't know. It says Craig Dunn. If you want to announce yourself, go ahead. Yeah, you're muted.
This is Cosette Dunn, and right now I'm representing Green Thumbs as well. And I too hope that we can get it on the agenda as soon as possible. We've just seen the traffic increase a lot there. It is a safety issue. It's a transportation issue. And we really need to get this accomplished as quickly as possible. It's, signs are okay. Unfortunately, they don't work.
Okay, that's fine. So like I said, Dory, send me the map and we'll take it from there. Any other, so I guess at this point, I will move on to liaison or observer comments. I don't know if I don't know if you're on finance committee liaison, but.
Steven, I'm going to jump so I can go to that other meeting and tell them that we're going to be late.
Sure.
Although it'll be obvious, but
yes. I did let our colleague know that I was running behind.
Okay,
Um,
I'm getting some hate texts, that's all.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I'll go right to public comment then. Any public comments? Going once, going twice. Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, by Mr. Johnston, seconded by Ms. Schwartz. All right, we'll call the roll. Again, I'll be going by my screen. Steve Dukrin,
Yeah.
Phil Posner.
Yeah,
Is it Posner or Posner? I've said it both ways.
it's Posner. You got it.
Got it. Okay. John Arena,
Aye.
Meryl Schwartz,
Aye.
Wally Johnston,
Aye.
and Stephen Crane. Aye. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you. And I will, and some people jumped off. I was actually looking at my calendar. As Wally noted, next month is the last Wednesday, is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And so do we want to look at potentially the 9th as our next meeting date? So based on that feedback, I will go ahead and propose the 9th, and we'll send out a notice on that. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.